Welcome to the Get Real with King Arthur show. How nice of you to tune in today. Well, I'm going to talk today, with your permission, about the mind and the brain and the relationship to each, and in the process also talk about the paranormal. But first, I'm going to have Queen Victoria read Emily Dickinson's poem on the brain. I think Emily Dickinson is America's greatest poet. Anyway, go right ahead there, Queen Victoria.
Okay. The brain is wider than the sky, for put them side by side, the one the other will contain with ease and you beside. The brain is deeper than the sea, for hold them, blue to blue, the one the other will absorb as sponges buckets do. The brain is just the weight of God, for heft them pound for pound, and they will differ if they do, as syllable from sound.
Thank you. Well, we know that the brain is the most complex thing in the universe, physically, and that's the latest frontier, largely, for research on the part of both philosophers and scientists. Now, the question is the mind totally a product of the physical brain? What is the relationship between the two? Or is the mind something that is separate from the brain? Now, one thing that I note in reading about philosophers and the brain-mind connection is the total lack of mention of the paranormal. Now I know that that's dangerous ground. But whatever one thinks of the paranormal, whether you think it's all superstition or it is a profound reality, at least it should be mentioned. And the paranormal talks about the brain as being, the mind as being, in some sense, sometimes separate from the brain. And so one of my students was having an operation, critical one, and near death, he was at the ceiling looking down at the operation. Now, those are many, many accounts of that and like matters. And really, most religions say that the mind is separate from the brain, part of yet separate. But anyway, just because we can't prove scientifically the fact that the mind can be outside the brain does not mean that that is not necessarily untrue. And the world, as Shakespeare has Polonius say, no, it's Hamlet. There's more Horatio in the world than is dreamt of in your philosophy. And I think we need a little more humility on the part of philosophers, scientists, King Arthur, and whoever. So I believe that it's a deep mystery, and we need to know more and I'm glad that scientists are finding more about the physical nature of the brain, and they are making great strides there, and I applaud them for it. But I think this is an open issue, and one for thought and debate. And anyway, the brain is wider than the sky and deeper than the ocean. I like responses. Now, I appreciate the fact that Wayne responded to Queen Victoria's talk on working with autistic children. He had suggested sound therapy as a possibility, to which Victoria agreed. So give us feedback and any thoughts you have. So have a very active brain today, and also maybe a mind. Have a great one. Thank you. Welcome to the Get Real with King Arthur show. Glad you're with me today. Well, there's an elephant in the room here. Now, it happens to be election day. Now, by the time you see this, it will be past, which is no problem, because I'm speaking to not who wins the election, but I want to talk about to those who lose the election. I do not know who will lose. And yet, on the other hand, I find that in every election, I lose and win some. Now, the presidency, it's win or lose. But I want to speak to this, how you are to respond if you do lose. I think of a parallel time in American history when at the site of the Battle of Gettysburg, Abraham Lincoln gave his famous Gettysburg Address. He spoke to a nation divided bitterly and at a horrible battlefield, bloody, awful. And so he had words to say that I think are applicable to our own situation, where we have a nation bitterly divided. Up to 70% of Americans feel that the worry about the election has traumatized them. Now, I want some advice to those who lose. First, you'll always win some and not lose totally, and those who win will lose some. But Lincoln has words for us. He spoke not only to the winning side, the Union, but to all of America. And his advice was that from this bitter fight, we learn something. And he says we ought to learn to take increased devotion, that the government of the people, by the people, and for the people should not perish from this earth. So we may lose, or someone may lose the election, but that only should stir us to increase vigilance. Now, one good thing about the election, whoever wins, is I think there's been a great turnout. And that is a great vote for democracy. And I think citizens are aroused and concerned, and they ought to be, but not to panic. Now, there are some reactions that I want to speak against. Violence of any kind, shooting at people, rioting. Protesting is okay, but rioting and violence are absolutely wrong. Shooting, yes, shooting at people. I don't think you should run to Canada if you lose. Stay and fight. I don't think you should withdraw into civil war. I even hear people talking about civil war. Didn't we learn once about the horrors of civil war? And so I say that be a happy warrior. If you lose, we're not giving up, whichever side you're on. We're going to continue to monitor our nation, to support our nation, to disagree when we must disagree, and to hold steady. So no running to Canada, no violence, no horrible demonstrations. You can protest. No giving up, and say, well, I'm going to trim my own garden or something. No. Increase devotion for America, for the country of the people, by the people, and for the people. I think you'll agree to me. And let's take increased devotion, whoever wins. Okay, thank you.